in the summer of 1938, I think it was in August, my father was asked to close his dental practice. And
Because he was Jewish?
Yes, because he was Jewish, and he apparently got extremely depressed. And then so I have to backtrack a bit, because my father was one of, nobody seems to know the exact number, but I think it was probably 7 children. And 2 of those children had moved to America and were living in New York. And that was a brother whose name was Uncle Max Rife, who spelled it with 2 F's, and my father's sister, who was Lena, but she got married and she became Lena Klinghoffer. And so there had been talk, apparently, I guess for some years, about the possibility of someday moving to America. But I think nobody ever really took that too seriously in the beginning. And then I think my father also must have, it must have been an impossible situation. I mean, he was already in his early 40s, he didn't speak English. You know, he had a thriving practice here. He would have had to retrain in the United States. And so I think, it just was not a very attractive option initially. But I think as things got worse, the decision was made that, we really had to get out. And so we had applied for passports and visas and things. And on the morning of September 30th, and this I only know from my brother, my mother and my father left the house together to do a variety of chores, including picking up the passports. And after they picked up the passports, they parted to do some more individual chores. And they were supposed to meet again in mid-afternoon. And a cousin of mine tells me that they were supposed to actually meet at her house. But my father never showed up. And then there was a phone call saying that he had been found dead at the bottom of a 4-story stairwell. And, there's a whole issue around that, because I had kind of grown up being told that my father committed suicide. For reasons that I'm not terribly sure about, except that my mother was a very private person in many ways, my mother always said that I must never tell anybody about that. And so I was always a good little girl, so I never told anybody about that, and I just told people that my father had died. So recently, in discussing this with my brother now, I've asked a lot of questions about this. Well, how do they know he committed suicide? Well, they knew he was very depressed. A lot of other Jews were committing suicide. And nobody else seemed to be around, and the death certificate reads, broken skull and multiple broken ribs. And so, I don't think, at least I am not consciously bothered at his having committed suicide. And my brother even thinks that he might have done it on purpose, because my brother thinks that he might have thought rationally that a family without a male would be better off, because the males, right after Kristallnacht, it was the males who were being plagued.
Did they get the passports that day, do you know?
They did get the passports that day.
So he wasn't disappointed over not getting a passport?
No, and incidentally, those passports were stolen or taken by the Gestapo on Kristallnacht. So that's another whole issue. I can't help wondering about 2 things. First of all, by talking to a lot of other survivors, and from reading, I know that Jews were incredibly harassed during that time, especially right after Kristallnacht and in the period just before. And so I think to myself, well, how do we know somebody didn't push him? Nobody really knows that. And the other thing that I find very peculiar is, why would somebody who was in the medical profession choose such a violent way to end his life? you know, jumping off a fourth-story stairwell is not a very attractive way to put an end to yourself. And I mean, he must have had all sorts of drugs at his disposal.
Yeah.
So, you know, he probably did commit suicide, but I think it's still open to question.